Good morning. I am the Reverend Denise Colley. I am your interim minister. My pronouns are she and hers. And I'm delighted to have you here today. We have a lot of things packed into the next few services. Today, I also want to remind you that after service, anyone who's like in 7th grade, 8th grade, even 9th grade, if you didn't get to do coming of age, we're having an interest meeting on that today right after service. So find me, I don't know where it is, but someone will tell me. And come to that, families come to that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, come to that. And we have a lot of youth in today's service, so I hope you'll help them with your attention. If you need to move up, people can hear differently in different parts of the congregation, so move where you need to so that you can really enjoy all of our guests and everyone in this service. And today we're going to talk about principles, covenants, and statements of faith. And they've changed a lot over over 450 years of Unitarian Universalism. And while we continue to hold on to what is dear, we continue to add to them. And sometimes we make things popular that were really hip 200 years ago and we bring them back. It's kind of like the retro cool thing we do. And we have this proposal that has come out and it's been shaped, and our delegates will be voting on it at General Assembly in June to see if we can try it out for a year. And we'll see how we're continuously learning more and growing and aiming to include more UUs in our circle, making it wider and wider. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, there were certain issues that I thought my elders were bananas for not embracing. I was like, what is wrong with them? Oh my God. Because I was in the Valley Girl stage, right? So I would think, how could they be so silly or so backwards or so ridiculous? So I want to ask you, I really want to know this, and if you see me in the receiving line, you can tell me this. Do you recall what issues were dear to you when you were 15 or 20 or 25? What were you passionate about? Was it civil rights? Was it the Vietnam War? Was it women's rights? Gay rights? Voting rights? Was it some bill that your government was toying over? Was it the legalization of abortion? What were you passionate about? What seemed ridiculous that not everyone agreed with you? I would love to know what those are, and I'd like you to think about that. Because I know that when I was 16 and 18 and 20, I swore I would never not know what those issues were that were the topics of the day. And I can tell you I have to get schooled sometimes at 50. And so whatever age you are, I want you to really think about that. And I have a bunch of our youth in the front rows here. Ask them what issues they care about. I really wonder about that. And so today I'm going to preach about where we have been and where we are going as Unitarian Universalists. And our faith is always evolving. A lot of people don't get it. They think it's whatever it was when they joined. Just like you thought that whatever the issue was when you were 15 or 20 was the most important thing and always would be, right? But our faith is participatory theology. That's why we keep having these talks and these conversations with the interim transitions team. It is proven that congregations that grow and are healthy have regular times that they have to talk to each other in small groups. That's our religion. And so I'm going to talk today about Article 2, and this is the most democratic thing we have ever done. We have had over 10,000 UUs participate in shaping this document. So if you haven't been one of those people, you still have a chance, because now the amendments have come out with all the people going, wait, I think it should say this and that. And they're out there, and there are discussion boards, and there are events that have been announced, and this is your time. And it's time to go talk, and it's time to listen. Now, someone told me that we have never at CCUU had all our delegate spots filled. And I said, I have never served a congregation that we don't fill all our spots. And we have more people going to GA this year then we have delegate spots. Because I think it's real important that we don't just sit back and say, I don't like it. I don't like it. I want it my way. And let me tell you, here was Reverend Matt and I in the house when we heard that it was changing from principles to values and covenant. I'm like, you are kidding me. They are not doing that. Are you serious? Fine, let me read it. Oh, I see where they're going here. Okay, I don't like this part. Oh, the next draft came out. Oh, they fixed that. Okay, good, okay. Now I'm like, oh, it's not all about me. And maybe you'll get there by the end of this service. Maybe you'll realize that this is about listening to a lot more voices. This is about including more people. And if you think to yourself, there's nothing wrong with them, they're all perfect, you probably weren't one of the people that was left out of them. But people have been. And so we're trying to improve. And you know what? We've been trying to do that for hundreds of years. And we continue to try because this is participatory theology. So listen to our kids talk today. They have a big part of the service. And how does that inform you? You know, and ask yourself, can I support this if it helps more of my fellow UUs feel seen and included?
Good morning. My name is Lois Phillips. That's my name. My pronouns are she and her. I've been a member here since so long ago, 1989. And I'm in the choir and a few other things. But I'm delighted to serve as your worship associate today. And I invite those of you at home to please kindle your chalice. Also, at home, feel free to enter into the chat some words that would say, my chalice is lit in Palatine, or this chalice is being lit on Smith Road. That will help us to feel a little more of your presence. If everyone would please join me in reading our chalice lighting words. We kindle this flame, honoring the ways of souls, the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wondering, hoping, fearing, dreaming. And if you are able and willing, spirit or otherwise, to rise, we will say our congregational covenant together. We unite to strengthen the bonds of kinship among all persons, to promote human dignity, and to increase reverence for life's creating, sustaining, and transforming power through worship, study, and service. And stay standing, please, if you will, and join me in singing hymn number 113, Where is Our Holy Church?
Where is our
take some space to have some gratitude for teachers. We've had several interim transition discussions on the importance of religious education for all, for every age. It's part of being a UU that we're supposed to constantly be learning and adding and going further into our journey. Our faith requires us to do it, whether it's through events or films or podcasts and all different experiences. So did you know that one of the keys to creating a lifelong UU, do you think it's just religious ed classes? No, in fact, studies say that that actually can create UUs who quit at 18 if that's all we do. It takes 5 adults in a congregation knowing the names of children and something about them. 5 for each kid. To create lifelong UUs. We have to unite them to our congregation and to people here. And so we have an incredible group of volunteers who volunteer to love up our children and learn their names and love them hard and love them through worship services and in classrooms and service projects and on field trips. And they love them by knowing them. And I hear story after story about the ways that our youth teach them, right? They'll have some concept they're going to describe, and then all of a sudden you all take off with it, and you explain how it works. And we are so grateful for learning from you. Our UU kids learn about our principles and our history, and often they know it better than adults. A lot of you say, well, I think they should learn elevator speeches. And have you? Yes, you have. And I think they should know about other religions. Well, have you? They do. So we have just so many amazing ways that we offer ideas on systems and evolution and justice, and it is an exchange. And if you have not been a part of this, I dare you to get involved. Whether it's this summer helping with a potluck, Debbie and Linda really need your help, or planning a craft or some other activity. So if you want an opportunity to better know our youth, talk to Debbie or Linda or myself. And I also want to hold up that our Director of Religious Education left this spring, and we've had 2 incredible volunteers. One of them's in here. Is the other one? There she is. Debbie and Linda are so incredibly capable. And Linda is here working her butt off. Debbie has me planned out for all the stories ahead and helping me out. I know more about what's going on in religious ed than I have all year. It's been amazing to work with these people. And you don't understand what a huge gift. They are working as staff for free. So next time you have an extra, meal, see if they need it. If they need weeding in their garden, ask them. They really want to see you showing interest in the kids and that you'll do something with them, because we really can't thank them enough. Not only is their gift worth thousands and thousands of dollars, it's worth the souls of these beautiful children. And so I can't thank you both enough. So can you spare a few hours, talk to Debbie and Linda? Thank you for giving them a special round of applause. Can I now have every teacher and substitute, or anyone who's worked with our kids, stand? Thank you so much. You nurture the garden of our children. And after service, please come up and get one of these beautiful vases and let it remind you of the seeds that you plant on a regular basis. Now, if I could please have my beautiful children volunteers for the play come on up. They are going to be giving us a play explaining Article 2 to you, which is where in the UUA bylaws we keep the principles. It's the weirdest thing. We're the weirdest faith that we stuck it in our bylaws. And while we don't like that there, that's what we've done, and so that's where it is. And so they're going to explain to you what's going on with this wonder box about Article 2. Take it away, Leilani.
We have this big, heavy wonder box filled with amazing ideas that a lot of people are starting to wonder about.
It says Article 2 in big bold letters on the side of the box, which is an odd name and maybe why there's so much wondering about it. There's so much in this wonder box. I could use some help. I wonder if I could ask you to help me upload this wonder box for everyone.
I would love to help you. Oh, wait. Did you notice what is on the other sides of the box? It looks like the box has more than just Article 2 inside of it. One side has our 7 UU principles. The other side has a list. It says Jewish and Christian teachings, prophetic words, humanist teachings. Oh, these are the inspirations and sources of our Unitarian Universalist faith.
The last slide says the purpose of Unitarian Universalism.
This must be a very important box. Could this box contain the part of our UUA rules that help govern our association of UU churches around the world? Oh yes! Article 2 is the part of those rules that has our UU principles, purpose, and sources. A very important box.
Look, there's a plant in here. Probably not the best place for a living thing. Stuck in a box for a long time and not cared for, plants need tending. I wonder why there's a plant in this Bible box.
I think I know. It's because we are a living tradition. Just like this plant. We are always changing our theology and updating it. It is a part of us being covenantal rather than creedal.
What is a creedal religion?
A creed is a profession of faith a religion might require you to believe. We are not like that. Unitarian Universalists ask us to be constantly learning and updating our values and covenanting to help one another learn to live out our values. We are covenantal, not creedal.
That's why the great hymnals we use each week say singing the living tradition. Look, there's something stuck to the bottom of this plant. It's a list of questions. Good questions for wondering. It's saying, why do we exist? What do we value? And where do we come from? Great wondering questions from our Wonder Box.
Yes, we are a living tradition because UUs keep returning to these questions. Many times over the last 200 years, UUs have come together as a people to talk and disagree and compromise the relationship making meaning together. In fact, we have done this so many times, usually once in a generation, that we made it a rule that we should do it every 15 years. But as of today, it's been 30 years since the last time we updated our faith's shared covenant values and inspirations.
I see a lot of rough drafts here. I see the original principles from 1961 in here. That one is where all the language refers only to the dignity of man and leaves out all other genders. Thank goodness we changed that.
I know why this is in our box. 10 years ago, some smart UUs of color said, we should add anti-racism and anti-oppression to our UU values. And they began organizing to add an 8th principle to our 7 principles. So we could finally name being anti-racist and working to remove all oppressions as a UU value.
Yes, and they helped us remember why we need to have another faith-wide conversation asking, why do we exist, what do we value, and where do we come from? We're really late, more than 30 years, and we have learned so much. We want our Unitarian Universalist faith to reflect all the wisdom we have gained.
To help us get there, over the last few years, volunteer leaders from our congregations volunteered at the national level and began holding conversations, asking UUs all over the country those questions. Did you know over 10,000 Unitarian Universalists have contributed to drafts of this new covenant? We have never had this much feedback on a draft of our values and principles in the history of Unitarian Universalism about who we are and why and what matters to us.
Now, the leaders working on this have taken all those conversations and worked to create a new statement about why we exist as a faith, what matters to us most, what do we value, and how do we want to be together. Can you look? It should be in there somewhere. Can anybody guess what this document is called?
The
Article 2 Study Report.
It's here. It's hard to reach past all these love parts. The Article 2 Study Report says we show love to one another in our world, and there are lots of ways we do that. It says the purpose of Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. It says that love is the power that holds us together, and it is acted upon through our shared values. What do you think about that? Is love what holds us together?
Love it.
Like, finally,
Of course, our faith needs to clearly welcome everyone. And finally, the word love is a part of our statement of faith. I must tell you, though, those 7 principles are not perfect. Most of us can only remember the first and last one, but they do have some fine ideas and words in them. I am all about changing as we learn and grow, but do we have to give up all our principles?
No. In fact, all the things we love from the principles are in this new draft. But the way we name them and explain them is changing. Their words are expanded to include more of who we are now. And the seeds of each principles we learned in RE and here in the sanctuary are still inside the new words. The one that talks about honoring the interdependent web of all existence is first now. So we can start with the web.
did you hear the order of them doesn't matter? He said that we can order them any way we like and change it every time. None are more important than another.
In fact, I heard the commission had a child pull the values out of a hat. And that is the order they wrote them down in this document. The one that talks about how every person has inherent dignity and worthiness now talks about each person being able to flourish in that worthiness, and how we will work together to make that flourishing possible.
And love is at the center of it all.
Yeah, love is at the center of it all. There are 2 big things still left in our box. A clock and a ballot.
I know what those are about. The Articles 2 Study Report just had the new amendments come out and was shared by the UA board, and now the clock is ticking on our democratic process.
The Article 2 draft and the amendments go to the 2023 General Assembly, the national gathering where UUs from all over the country gather to make democratic decisions together for a vote. There will be opportunities at GA to give more input and feedback and debate.
That is the living tradition part again, right?
People will do the thing we've always done. Come together and discuss and feel passionately and disagree and compromise and make things better and make meaning together. Then we'll vote to let us keep working with them and try them out.
And this is such a big deal. And we want so many people to be involved and have their voices heard that will vote on it again at the General Assembly in 2024.
Yes, and CCUU has 6 delegate spots for members who want to actively participate.
Thanks. This Article 2 Wondering Box feels much lighter now. I am so glad we are a part of a faith where we all participate, discuss, learn, are challenged, and respect our differing opinions.
That is because we are a faith of love, evolution, and justice.
When the rain comes down, it comes down on everyone. the stars shine down,
When the stars shine down,
they shine down on everyone. When the stars shine down,
when the stars shine down,
they're shining on everyone. Don't matter if you're rich or poor. Don't matter if you're big or small. When the rain shines down, it shines down on us all. When the flower blooms,
when a flower blooms,
it's blooming for everyone. When a flower blooms,
when a flower blooms,
it's blooming for everyone. Don't matter if you're rich or poor. Don't matter if you're big or small. When the flower blooms, it's blooming for us all.
join in with the kids now.
When a baby cries, it's crying for everyone. When a baby cries, it's crying for everyone. Don't matter if you're rich or poor. Don't matter if you're big or small. When a baby cries, she's crying for us all. When the rain comes down, it's coming down. When the rain comes down, it's going for everyone. Don't matter if you're rich or poor. Don't matter if you're big or small. When the rain comes down, it comes down on us all. When the rain comes down, it comes down on us all.
I feel lonely now. All right. Aren't they wonderful? I'm so proud of them. Let us pray for a moment. Take a deep breath, or whatever breath feels comfortable to you. Put yourself in a position where you can let some stuff go. Today, let us pray for open hearts. What do you need to be more open about in your life? Let us pray that we can let new ideas in when they are presented to us, try them out. May we wonder how we can change in order to change the world around us. May we grow into the elders that our much younger selves desired us to be. Go back in your soul. Go back in your memory. Who was that person? Do you see them? What message do they have for you today? Breathe into that message. Breathe into the message that our youth are bringing to us. Talk to them. So often, people talk to me about what they can and can't afford for their children. I think more than anything, all of us want the gift of presence, our attention, our hearing, our listening. So whoever that younger self was that you desired you would always become, go pull out the wisdom that they had then and carry it with you in your pocket this week. Breathe into that. Amen. All right. Without reading them, or looking in your hymnals, or Googling on your phone, what about the UU principles is most meaningful to you? I will take answers from the audience and I will repeat them. Yes? Treating everyone equally. Excellent. Inherent worth and dignity. Nancy?
Creates grounding for my beliefs.
I couldn't quite hear that.
It creates grounding for my beliefs.
It creates grounding for your belief. White shirt over here.
Recognizing the entire web of life.
Whole web of life. Absolutely. Natalie? Interconnection. Elizabeth?
Participate in the democratic process.
All right. Purple hair back there.
Intellectual freedom.
I couldn't hear that.
Intellectual freedom.
Intellectual freedom. Okay. So, my friend Luis will put up my next slide. So when the Article 2 Commission went and did all these sessions all over the country, and they had online ones, it was really interesting. Everyone can remember the 7, and then the first principle, the best. Most of us cannot remember all 7 principles. So as much as we love to say that we don't want them to change, we've read them a few times. We went, yep, good, joined the church, and we've kind of not worked with them as a whole thing, right? So one of the cool things about what's been drafted into Article 2 is there's both a much shorter version and then there's a longer version to kind of help us out. So the 7th is shown most strongly, and then the 1st, and even though people can reflect something from all of them, like sometimes in the 6th they remember world community, or community emerges. There's also something bigger or smaller, like our community of communities. If you haven't heard that term, that's from Paula Cole-Jones, did a big lecture at GA a couple of years ago and talked about how in a Unitarian church, there's like the big community, which we might see at worship, and then there's the smaller communities. It might be the choir, or it might be the pagan cups group, or it might be, the environmental group or the Brutus. So we're a community of communities here. She's also the author of the 8th principle. The funny thing was that as these sessions were held, hardly anyone could name all the principles. The 1st and the 7th, and then maybe a word or two from the ones in between. And we realized that as much as we say we love them, we don't actually know them. And because we're not the kind of faith that makes people memorize things, right, and test us on it, what does it actually mean to be a UU? What does it mean you are? Like, do you just show up? Does that make you a UU? Do you read these principles a couple times? How many of you knew they were in the bylaws? Did you know that before this year when I started talking about it? Because I don't think I did, all right? Is there a responsibility when you're a UU to do something, to participate, to work, to be in community, to discuss, to volunteer? As much as our kids need 5 people, we need at least 5 people in the community, right? And it's only that we usually achieve that by volunteering for things or going to groups or going to a class, joining the choir. So what makes us a UU? Now, a lot of people are afraid that if we change the principles, like suddenly we won't be UU anymore, right? So people have a lot of fears about changing the principles, and I told you that even I had fears, like aren't they okay as they are, right? And I've heard some people say, just don't mess with them. Don't mess with them. So by now you've heard that the principals are going through a major revision, just as they have for all of UU history. And if you didn't remember it, that's not our fault. But I'll remind you today. If you recall from the skit the kids did, as well as the one that Reverend Scott and I did this fall, right? And I had him reading quotes about the brotherhood of man and praising Jesus. Or the one about diffuse the knowledge and promote the interests of religion which Jesus has taught as love to God and love to man. Do you remember that one? Right? I think it's really interesting that we used to have love in the principles and we're actually bringing love back in this new version. Now, if you, like me, may have heard of this and thought, wait a minute, no they didn't. They are not doing that. They are not changing the principles. They can't do that. I get it. I get it. I've been on my own little journey working on this. So maybe you read them and you had a whole bunch of criticisms. I did on some of the earlier drafts. Of all the things the world needs to solve, I was like, really, we're going to spend time writing these core documents? But they kept working at them, and for me, they got a lot better. And I know as much as I wholeheartedly support the concept of the 8th anti-racism, anti-oppression principle that was proposed, I'm far more excited about it being added to all the concepts rather than one that kind of stuck out and was written in a different kind of tone. I'm pretty excited that it's just a part of everything because we're always working at anti-racism. It's not something we ever arrive at. It's not something we did in the 60s and we're done with it. No, we're always learning more. We're always getting more. That's why we're working so hard about all this censorship stuff that's going on, right? Because people are trying to rewrite history by having us not know it. And you can't heal what you don't know. So you might be thinking, they were fine. Don't mess with it. I like it my way. Please, no, I get it. If these principles have worked for you, they are awesome. And they've said everything you need. And you might be thinking, is she saying that they didn't work for everyone? How can that be? And I wonder if you would be surprised to know that people said exactly this the last major revision in 1961, when the principles were all framed in male-gendered language. And they said the same things in 1790 when Principles and Values discussed the perfections of God. And they said that in 1825 when they added that the goal was uniting all Unitarian Christians. And in 1844 they added, new occasions teach new duties. Time makes ancient good uncouth. They must upward still and onward keep abreast of truth, they wrote. So even back then, in 1844, they were encouraging us to continually learn, to continually look at what we know. So you can hear them, even those way past ones, and say, oh, that was us. And now we know more, and we've learned more, and we've spread more, and we're updating them. We have to stay abreast. And as much as I can say I don't relate, I see where they're going, and I see how each version brought us closer and closer to something we're striving for. So even if I didn't relate to 1825 and 1844, I see those seeds of what we are now. And so you may wonder, what isn't working for some people about these current principles? So for years, we've heard from people who have different gender identities. We heard from women, tons of women, right, in the 60s and 70s, that they did not feel included in these principles. We've heard from people of color. We've heard from lots of people also that they don't always feel comfortable in our congregations. And that surprises people who think that our congregations are perfect, right? We know that we've lost more than 10,000 black UUs, right? We know we have done that. We know that many of the people of color who join Unitarian Universalism are in mixed race couples and families, or they have biracial children, or they've adopted. We know that lots of black, brown, and multiracial UUs all over the years have left our faith. We see people come and visit and not return, right? So one thing I've heard people, even in this congregation, say is, why do we need those words? That just makes us seem like we're showing off. We already are those things. Why do we need to say it? It's a valid point. We need to say it because otherwise, people who don't feel included aren't sure they belong here. This is welcoming language. This is invitational language. This is, a covenant is something that's an aspiration that we aim to live into. Now, many of you know that in 1894, there was a popular covenant that you may have heard, and many of us memorized. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. 1894. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. Written by James Blake for the Church of All Souls right here in Evanston, Illinois. Right? Widely used by many UU churches even today. It came to be very popular, and that one's full of love. So I've heard some people say, why are we putting love into it? It was a good idea, right? And we get to define love. If you listen to the commissioners talk, they aren't defining all the words. We can define if that means a mankind kinship, if that means a human kinship, if that means love of the earth and love of the plants. So what else is going into these new values? Did they get rid of my favorite part? Right? In 1961, Unitarianism and Universalism merged, forming a new religious association. And I want to say that I borrowed all these slides with permission from Reverend Dr. Cynthia Landrum. Thank goodness she made them. So that association that they put together was an association of congregations, same thing that the UUA is now, right? Although there were a few lifetime members that joined one association, and they were all grandfathered in, and it would be democratic. Their aim was congregations sending delegates to vote on the association's business. And they wanted it to be a non-creedal group with principles embedded into the bylaws, but addressed to congregations to uphold them, not individuals. And the funny thing about this is that the problem with the principles is that they are written, and many use them like a creed, right? Like a memorized thing. If you believe this, you can join, right? That's a creed saying you have to believe this, right? So even though we wanted to be non-creedal, we wrote this list that, for me as a someone who grew up Catholic, feels a whole lot like 10 Commandments, right? People used it as a litmus test for joining our congregations. So I have the original 1961 Article 2 principles, and you can see there were 6. All right, so there were 6 of them. And then in 85 and 86, we went to redo them. We came up with 7 of them, right? And they were actually a little shorter. We got a little more concise, and we got rid of all the gendered language, right? And that's when we added the interdependent web of existence. So you can see how the environment was becoming much more important then, right? You can see how understanding that we had to relate to each other and to the earth was becoming much more important. So imagine the fights, right? Imagine that younger self of yours. I didn't need that environmental stuff, right? Right? So in 1986, we had another big vote, and there was another commission, and they went around and they got feedback, but they never got this much feedback because we have technology now, right? So we've gotten a lot more feedback. So in 86, we changed our principles to the ones you know now, or sort of like that, pretty close. They're printed in lots of places, including the fronts of your hymnals. And then we added new sections to Article 2 then. That's when we added sources following the principles. In the previous 1961 principles, we moved those sections around, we reordered things, right? So like 1 didn't stay 1, moved around, right? And we created things about freedom of belief and non-discrimination and purposes. Some of the old principles concepts were moved to new areas. We had a lot of fights about non-discrimination and how that should be named. So back then we created a new section of Article 2 called Principles and Purposes, and we moved statements about Judeo-Christian heritage and God to a new section within the principles, but below them we called that the sources. And we added a bunch more religions and non-religious sources of authority, places that UUs draw inspiration, right? So I have a slide that Luis is going to put up comparing 1961 and 1985. And I know you can't read it all, but what's important is the color. So if you look, turquoise to turquoise means in 1961 it was often the third to affirm, right, and defend and promote our supreme worth of every human personality for the dignity of man. Well, that moved over to number 1 in 85 and 86, the inherent dignity and worth of every person. So you can kind of see how it's been part of our tradition to kind of keep some of the language but move it around and re-edit it and make it more inclusive. That's our tradition that we've been going with. So there were 6 in 61, we reordered them, we added another one in 85, 86. All of them were dramatically reworded. And the UUI bylaws have within them the idea that the principles in all of Article 2 are supposed to be examined and reviewed every 15 years. But we've been sometimes irregular about that, like you can relate if you've ever been on a board and you're like, oh, we were supposed to do that last year. We forgot. We didn't get to it. The roof caved in, or whatever happened, right? So same thing, right? So sometimes we've been a bit slack, but it is required that we do that. So all the people have been like, why'd they do that? We did that because our bylaws say we have to do that. And in fact, that has been part of our tradition for hundreds of years. You can see it in the 44 language, right? You can see that. Now in 85 and 86, that's when we added 6 source to the sources and principle sections, and we added spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Now, can you imagine that not being a part of it now, right? I couldn't imagine that. I think I identify as a religious naturalist. I believe that we are all part of an ecosystem, whether we're human or animal or plant. Now, so in 95, that became really important to a lot of UUs, and it was really controversial. This was like hotly debated. If we would have had a UU tabloid, it would have been on the front, right? Believing in nature now, right? What has come to these UUs? Now, it's 20 years later, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal now, right? We've added earth-centered traditions to our spiritual sources. We draw from embracing paganism and Native American traditions. We know here, right, we do a solstice service. In a few weeks we have coming up a summer equinox service, right? We know that pagan groups flourished in the UU faith, and there's lots of churches that have cups groups. Doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me now. It's interesting that in our countryside history, it may interest you to know that Reverend Rupert Lovely strongly preached against adding this to our faith. He was totally against it. I heard a really great story Leslie Peet can tell you about that. Talk to her. Then in 2009, there were a whole host of changes that were suggested, and they went to be voted on, and they were rejected. So I know you can't read everything on the slides I'm showing you because the important parts I'm describing to you, but the visual, and I can email this to you if you want to see it. The visual is how many changes were proposed, 85, 86. And some of them are concepts that I'm seeing now reappear in this current version in Article 2. Some of them have been totally rejected. But I'm seeing some of them, including they were trying to put in a non-discrimination, anti-oppression principle and inclusion back then, and that was rejected. It's interesting, though, that in 2009, what was rejected is it was rejected 573 to 586. So that means being a delegate actually matters, and voting actually matters, right? Being a part of the democratic process matters. So I'm really excited that we have more people going to GA this year than we have delegate spots. So we're going to use all our spots this year. And Lisa Gilly and Mike Gilly and Melanie Trebek and Leslie Pete. And Leslie Pete, talked to her. She's been very active in doing the sessions about Article 2 lately and contributing and suggesting changes and stuff. I know some others of you have too. We have Judy Ball and Jeannie Scown, Mari Van Meter, Natalie Krestev is going virtually, and plus Lori Lance is going, and so am I. So we have a whole bunch of us going, and they're going to have a service this summer to tell you what it was like and try to tempt you to go next year. Next year it'll be virtual. They're probably going to an every other year system of in-person and then virtual, so more people will be able to participate. So in 2013, they tried again to add non-discrimination and now titled it inclusion. And they tried changing persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. Because we love to fight about the words. We do. I can so count on other people fighting about the words that I honestly never contribute to these things. Like, I'm kind of like, I'm good, you'll take care of that for me. I vote, I go to all the things, I watch. I mean, I'm not saying I never would, I'm just sort of saying, I have colleagues that organize groups and they all start talking and they have meetings, and I'm like, I do trust them, I know them, right? So the latest round of amendments, anything else that I felt itchy about, it's in there. And the people who are really good at this are getting groups of people together. And one thing the UUA board is doing is you can't just propose something and say, well, I thought of it. And one of the questions is, well, who have you talked to this? Who have you talked to about this? And so people who have been doing organizing and bringing more people together, because we are a participatory theology, their amendments are floating higher in the bills that will be proposed. Changes to the 85-86 Article 2 through the years. 2017, we had some amendments both pass and fail. Failed, changing the first principle from we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity to all people to all beings. That failed. Now, we have some people in this congregation that have been bringing up through the interim sessions and a few other places that they would like us to change our countryside covenant to being something about all beings rather than human, right? Rather than man, right? To really think about all beings. So these are ideas that we have had for a long time, and people keep working at it. Something that passed was changing one of the sources from prophetic words and deeds of men and women to people. So it's interesting that 2017 that we had this going on. Now, I have to wonder, and some of my other colleagues wonder, did the one about all beings fail because too many people were afraid it would force them to be vegetarian? Was that what it was about? I don't know. But it's interesting. Because we sure have had animal rights, right? We have a whole group of animal rights UUs, an organization around that. We've got all kinds of green sanctuary and green advocacy. It's really interesting that that failed, right? But we did pass changing prophetic words and deeds of men and women to deeds of people, getting rid of that gender binary language. Now, in more recent years, we've had an 8th principle that was suggested, right? And that has been passed by many individual congregations. It was journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. I frequently hear something here at Countryside. First, I just love this one. I love it when you all say, the UUA. This dangerous on high group like the UUA is the Pope, right? As though there's some entity that rules us. It's an association of congregations. And so when I explain that the UUA is us, it is volunteers from congregations who are governing through boards and teams and commissions, just like the boards and teams and task force that we have here at Countryside, and they are volunteers. I am then often told, it's the staff. They're doing it, right? And I often have to remind folks that the staff are hired by the board and volunteers, and they have to do the work that the board and volunteers assign them to do. So in fact, there are a couple of open positions on one of the UUA boards that I actually think 2 people here at Countryside would be great for, and I'm going to be talking to them. So, God, if one of you actually joins one of those, then I'm going to be able to prove to you that the UUA is us, right? I've also heard of you, some of you say that the position about working toward anti-oppression and anti-racism comes from the UUA. And I want to call out to you that it's about 300 congregations now, all on their own, with no creed or word from the UUA, that have chosen on their own to do lots of education around anti-racism and anti-oppression, and they've done congregation-wide classes and series and sermons and this and that, and then they voted democratically, and they've become 8 principal congregations, all on their own. No one told them to do it. So we have about 800 or so congregations. So 300 of them have done that. So I'm sorry, it's not the UUA, it's us. This was a big enough chunk of congregations doing this that the board went, yo, we got to get that Article 2 commission going again because we're out of our bylaw covenant, right? So it's required every 15 years. There've been a lot of little changes in between since another big version. And just like the commission that met in 1844 and required us to keep abreast of current knowledge, this has been core to who we are and that we evolve and change. And so the Article 2 Commission issued a proposal in November, and it got feedback, and now they've issued several more versions, and each one had thousands of people issuing suggestions, and now we've had more than 10,000 people participating. I've actually stopped keeping track because I think it's even more and more now, but I'm like, okay, we're good. That's a lot of us, right? Article 2, like we did in the 80s, had a lot of resonances and repeats of the past. And there's some things that are new, and it will go to vote this year at UUA General Assembly. And if it passes, we work with it for another year. So a bunch of things that we all want to criticize because we're mad it doesn't have, and I'm among you. I'm like, come on, I need good graphics, I need a class, I need a this, right? That's why they vote on it, because they don't want to waste a bunch of time working on all this stuff, and then we go, we ain't taking it, right? Because that's a lot of time and money of ours. So if we don't vote to let us try it out for a year, then that ends. So we need a simple majority to try them out, and if it goes well, next year we need a 2/3 majority to pass it. And so the biggest part of the proposed Article 2 is that principles and sources are being replaced with a section replacing them that is values and covenant. And replacement of the sources, which weren't really their own section, had always been confusing. It's going to a section called inspirations, and let's look at those inspirations. So that big list, we kept adding to the list, the pink. We kept adding more and more things. We're like, wait, shouldn't we add Hinduism? There's a proposal out there for that. Shouldn't we add Muslim? I think there's a proposal out there for that, right? Shouldn't we add, and we were going on and on and on, right? The list was getting really long. So now they've changed that to secular and sacred understandings that help us to live into our values. We respect the histories and contexts and cultures to which they were created, and are currently practiced. These sources ground us and sustain us in our ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. It goes on. So inspirations is where we're going now. So using color coding, the pink list is trying to summarize rather than naming every faith and every sacred text we love. You know, for me, it would have Robin Wall Kimmerer up there, right? Right? So if we tried to add all the ones we love, it was getting kind of ridiculous. And we know amongst us we have Jewish UUs and Christian UUs and humanist and pagan and Muslim and Hindus and Buddhists. So this is a question, is it problematic to make a list where we might leave something out, or is it more valuable that we list people who thereby feel specifically welcomed? And I think it's always worth uplifting that our faith holds as authoritative not just scriptures, but also our own experience. So there's pluses and minuses to this. I find myself comforted that at least this new version helps more people feel included. And I want as many people to feel included in our faith as possible, because I think it's a life-saving faith, because I've experienced that. And so I generally agree with all the things, and I can respect the changes are needed to help the whole community. Now, Luis is going to put up the slide which you've seen before, this one. I also love that I can get it down to 7 words, right? So now I think there's a hope that we could actually memorize 7 words. Independence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, justice, and love. And as you heard from the kids, that's a real thing. It doesn't matter what order we say them in. They really had a kid pull them out of a hat, and they don't want you to see any one of them as more important than the other. They do see love as linking it all, but again, none of them are more important. I had one of us in one of the sessions that I did here discussing it, someone said, well, I think evolution's the most important. Great! No one's telling you you can't think that. So values and covenant proposed is basically 7 parts. They're different 7 parts than our principles. Love is a big one at the center, followed by the 6 that I just named. It's a short list like this. I love that, okay? Then there's a longer section where it describes the what, right? But we get to define the what. I said that wrong. It describes the how more than the what. We get to define the what. So you could have a different definition of love than you, right? And now I have some great handouts. If any of you want them, say, Reverend Denise emailed us, right? Plus you can go online, you can read the whole document, you can read all the proposed amendments. You can also still sign up for GA. You don't have to be a delegate, but you can sign up for GA. You can go online. It's interactive even online. It's way better than just a Zoom, right? Because ours is a faith that changes. This is participatory theology. So that means we actually have to participate to be Unitarian Universalist and to shape our faith into what we want it to be. So if this passes, I'll do more sermons drawing from this and the rich history. And I know that we all hold different parts dear. And I also sat before writing this sermon with our mission handouts from all the notes you guys did on the mission group for the interim transitions team. And you know what? I found all the words that people said in this new edition. How cool is that? Words like justice and equity and compassion and love and hope. We never had hope before. Welcoming the dismantling of oppression and dismantling of racism and the interdependent web and respect and equity, freedom and tolerance and reason and agency and transformation and learning and the democratic process. They're all in the new Article 2. And so many more that we care about. They're in a different order. There's new descriptions around them. And like every version we have had for hundreds of years, they are written to work to include more of us, to help more of us feel seen about who we are. And if you're still thinking, but I like it my way, it's understandable. This takes time, right? It takes learning and meditation to adjust, and I hope you will read the new document 3 times with an appreciative inquiry lens, which means you read it the first time looking for things you like. Go through and highlight things you like, and then read it through again and soak it in more. And then finally look at it a 3rd time with a more critical eye, and this is a way to read that keeps your mind open. Because remember that younger person of you that you liked, that you thought knew it all? This is a way to go visit with them, right? This is your chance to take on a new possibility, a new way that might turn this into your way. And then finally go to those Article 2 comment boards and read what's going on with the amendments. There are so many UUs working in groups and aiming to bring large swaths of us together to feel more comfortable with this proposal. This is an evolution, like all the other versions were an evolution. If you don't love every part of it, don't worry, we'll have more. It'll change again in your lifetime. I believe we are stronger together. I believe in community. So, read it again, read the amendments, and then ask yourself, can I support this if it helps more of my fellow UUs feel seen and included? Blessed be.
Now is the time in our service we set aside to share in the communal ritual of giving. Our congregation is funded entirely by pledges and contributions from you, our beloved members and friends. Giving helps us feel more generous, and it shows your support for our congregational life. See the screen or the order of worship for several ways to donate. You can donate right on your phone. And if this is your first time worshiping with us, please let the basket pass you by. Your presence is gift enough for us.
So when you're asked to come up with a song that incorporates justice, interdependence, equity, love, transformation, pluralism, generosity, where would you turn? To Woody Guthrie would turn. This morning I was born again, and a light shines on my hand. I no longer look for heaven in your deathly distant sand. I do not want your pearly gates, I don't want your streets of gold. This morning I was born again, and a light shines on my soul. This morning I was born again, I was born again complete. I stood above my troubles, and I stand on my 2 feet. My hand, it feels unlimited, my body feels the sky. I'm at home in the universe, where yonder planets fly. This morning I was born again, my past is dead and gone. This great eternal moment is my great eternal dawn. Each drop of blood within me, each breath of life I breathe, is united with these mountains, and these mountains with the sea. Its rays crawl through my skin. I breathe the life of Jesus and old John Henry in. I give myself, my heart, my soul, to lend some friend a hand. This morning I was born again, I am in the promised land. This morning I was born again, and a light shines on my hands. I no longer look for heaven in your deathly distant sands. I do not want your pearly gates, I don't want your streets of gold, and I do not want your mansion. But my heart is never cold. Putting a board hat on, I was asked to talk about what's Countryside's Raise the Paddle for the talent auction, which starts today in about 45 minutes. So what we've done is dues to the UUA, the Association of Unitarian Universalist Congregations. As a board, we've worked to make our contribution increasingly stronger over the last few years. Not quite up to where it should be in terms of looking at a fair share, but we've definitely increased it. And to increase it a little bit more, one of your opportunities will be to raise your paddle for a contribution to that. We've had tremendous help from the UUA. It's groups of congregations, but there's also technical staff who advise Lori, Rev D, Allison, myself, our board every day. So we couldn't have gotten through the pandemic without some of their technical assistance. Particularly now, we're leaning on them quite a bit in terms of the search process. So that's one of your Raise the Paddles.
Good morning. My name is Christine Organ. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm here to say a few words about the Illinois Community for Displaced Immigrants, or ICDI, and Chalice House. You have the opportunity to support both of these programs at the Time and Talent auction this week. First, let me explain Chalice House. As many of you know, Chalice House is a shared project between Countryside, several community partners, and ICDI to provide temporary housing and support immigrants seeking asylum in the U.S. Physically speaking, Chalice House is the home located directly north of this building, and we currently have 4 residents from Colombia and Guatemala who live there until they receive their work permit from the U.S. government and are able to live independently. But Chalice House is so much more than a home. It is a community, and it is faith in action. In addition to providing housing, Countryside and its community partners provide mentorship and support, including helping the family connect with the community, find employment, practice English, and adjust to life in the United States. The program provides educational, skill development, and entertainment opportunities for the Chalice House residents, such as driving lessons, park district fees, and visits to the zoo, museum, and botanic gardens. For many years, the home was used as a rental property and generated much-needed rental income for Countryside. With the money we raised from donors within and outside of CCUU, Chalice House provides $16,000 in that lost rental income directly to the bottom line of our annual budget, and also funds some of the services I just mentioned. Your contribution to Chalice House at the Time and Talent auction will be used to fund these important needs and services. I'd also like to tell you about the opportunity to support ICDI at the auction. ICDI's work extends beyond its community housing programs and also provides a wide range of services and advocacy support for immigrants at the local, state, and national levels. For instance, its Chicago Immigrant Transit Assistance Program accompanies recently arrived asylum seekers at the Chicago Greyhound bus station, where they are released from immigration detention locally or have a bus layover or final destination in Chicago. ICDI was also significantly involved in providing temporary housing at area hotels when Chicago saw an influx of immigrants from Venezuela recently. And ICDI provides critical advocacy support to advance changes to our broken immigration system. As I often say, Chalice House is a way to have a personal impact on a systemic problem. By attending the Time and Talent auction and generously giving to Chalice House, ICDI, and our other partners, you are also having a very direct, personal, and important impact. You are building the beloved community. Thank you.
And now stand as you are willing and able and sing with me hymn 145, As Tranquil Streams.
Blessings on your journey this week. Go visit your younger self and talk to them. Go in peace.